Good afternoon, everybody.
Welcome to 574 Sports.
En su transmisión en
574-535-7488. Broadcasting since 1958.
This is WGCS Goshen.
Where do I begin? I'll start with a little story.
It's not just a job. It's not something that you guys have been assigned to do. You're doing it because you love radio.
The station felt like home, and I loved being up there. If I wasn't in my twin bed, I was up at the Globe. It just felt awesome to be up there.
I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, going up there in that little room and just selecting the music I wanted.
I was just mesmerized by the fact that if I wanted to, I could be on the radio.
Being 19, 20 years old, you don't get those type of opportunities everywhere.
To this day, I can say that music is the frosting on the cake of my life, and I kind of got my start in music appreciation in the WGCS studio.
But what really comes down to is the students who do come in and say, I want to do radio, walk into the hallways of the Globe, and they see students taking it seriously while having fun and producing quality content that not only wins awards, but serves the community.
WGCS, also known as The Globe, was not always the award-winning station that it is today. With its studios located on the campus of Goshen College, the Globe's long, rich history can best be revealed through the words of its former student staff members. Even before its inception in the fall of 1958, students took up the challenge to broadcast on campus. Robert Lurch, class of 1956, was one such student with a vision of an FM broadcasting station, a technology that was new to the world at the time.
I don't know if it was an individual or if the college had a small, I want to say 5 or 10 watt transmitter. But what happened was that we got the transmitter out and fit in a metal frame. We knew it would be illegal to use it, so we strung wires to all the buildings on campus.
These wires would stretch across campus to the Culp and Kaufman dormitories, the main academic buildings on campus, and even the dining hall. This experimental broadcasting was cut short, however, when the college received a cease and desist order to stop all operations from the small transmitter.
Gentlemen, engineer Earl A. Peterson of this office, who visited Goshen College on May 7, 1952, has submitted a report concerning the unlicensed operation of a radio transmitting apparatus. In view of that report, your attention is directed to the provisions of the Communications Act of 1934, as amended, and the Commission's rules and regulations governing the operation of radio transmitting equipment. Very truly yours, H.D. Hayes, Engineer in Charge.
Forced to stop broadcasting, the students started to look for a way to comply with the Federal Communication Commission. This action caught the eye of Jake Swartzendruber. Jake helped convince the college to formally create a radio station to serve the campus and the community. Seeking approval, Jake went on the hunt for equipment he would need to create a radio station. Robert Lurch recounts the story of Jake buying the transmitter.
Western Michigan University was upping their power, and they were putting in a new transmitter. And they wanted to sell the transmitter that they had, but they did not want to sell it to any place but an educational institution or something like that. And so the transmitter that came originally, that transmitter came from Western Michigan, and the only thing that needed to be done to go on the air was change the crystal to the correct frequency.
It was the graduating class of 1956 who rallied together to pay for the initial setup. Robert Lurch and his former roommate Ralph Huntsberger were the class representatives. They presented Goshen College with $1,845 to start up a formal radio station. The transmitter itself would cost $680. Additional equipment, including a frequency monitor, antenna parts, cables, and feeds for the installation of a tower, would combine to a grand total of $1,855. After 2 years of paperwork and equipment tests, the college received another letter from the FCC.
Relay 13. Forms 341 received. Authority granted WGCS Conduct Program Test New Station Accordance Permit. Rules pending further action license application. Effective radiated power 390 watts. Mary Jane Morris, Secretary, Federal Communications Commission. August 19, 1958.
Later that year, on October 2nd, 1958, WGCS made its first transmission.
Welcome to WGCS in Goshen, Indiana. WGCS is owned and operated by the Goshen College Broadcasting Corporation. The station operates on the assigned frequency of 91.1 megahertz in stereo, with an effective radiated power of 7.4 kilowatts, horizontal and vertical, with authorization from the Federal Communications Commission in Washington, D.C. Our studios and transmitter are located in the Union Building on the campus of Goshen College. Some WGCS programs are pre-recorded for broadcast at a later date. If you have any questions or comments about WGCS, write to the General Manager, WGCS Radio, Goshen College, Goshen, Indiana, 46526. This is 91.1 FM, WGCS, Goshen, Indiana.
This action laid the groundwork for Professors Jake Swartzendruber and Dr. Roy Umble to become the founding fathers of WGCS. To keep the station on an informal and personal level, Professor Jake Swartzendruber and Dr. Roy Umble insisted students call them by their first names of Jake and Roy. These two brought their passion for speech and the desire to spread the mission of Goshen College. Together, they combined their efforts to create and direct the radio station for 2 decades. John Frankenfield, class of 1968 and former student station manager, recalls the two professors.
The people that were the mainstays back then were Roy Umble and Jake Swartzendruber. Roy was the speech professor, and he was the program director manager, and he would coach us how to speak, what things not to say. For example, we could never use the possessive for Bach because it would end up with box. Umble would really, if he would hear that, he would call in the station and say, get it right.
With his soft criticism, Roy continued to be more than a mentor to his students. To Dale Sloat, WGCS alumni in class of 1960, Roy Umble was a friend.
He was very low-key and very gentle in his criticism of things, and he was just a good friend of coming alongside, and he really was a good support.
From purchasing the transmitter to running the cables, Jake became a constant presence at WGCS. Charlie Kaufman, class of 1966, remembers Jake's dedication.
He was the original technical guy that even set the station up initially, from a hardware side and all that. Jake was always hanging around. He would show up, you never know. And he would tinker around with this, and he'd fiddle with that, and he'd adjust the other thing and all that, always with a quip and a smile.
Like Roy, Jake was a friend to those involved with the station. In addition to his responsibilities at WGCS, Jake was also involved with amateur radio. Dale Sloat identified with Jake through their common radio interests.
Jake and I became very good friends. And the interesting thing about that was, when I was in Brazil serving as a missionary, see, both Jake and me were ham radio operators. And when we were in Brazil, we had a weekly sked with Jake. And what he would do, he'd catch us up on Goshen College news. So we talked to him every week. It was a friendship that we established there and continued with Jake.
Together, Jake Swartzendruber and Roy Umble strive for only the best. Jake's son, Sandy Swartzendruber, was able to see those two come together to make a station that became such a success.
They were striving for the best quality that they could get. And so all the way down the line, even with minimal stuff that they had, they made a good sound. He was always one that would tinker with stuff, and we'd always kind of get him a little bit, to give him a piece of baling wire and a pair of pliers, and he could fix anything. And I think he did that on a lot of the stuff that, the early stuff with the transmitter and so forth, because, there was probably no funds available to put into expensive things, so he had to repair and keep it going.
It took many dedicated individuals to have the vision of operating a professional radio station in the Goshen College setting. Without the passion and dedication of individuals such as Jake and Roy, WGCS and all who have walked through its doors would never have had the success they experience today.
I think WGCS should be unique whenever it is on the air.
This has been a 60-year retrospective of WGCS 91.1 The Globe. Clips taken from the 25th anniversary include the voices of Jake Schwarzenjuber and Roy Umble, the two founding fathers of WGCS.
Two members of the class of 1956, especially these two, Ralph Huntsberger and Bob Lurch, had convinced the class of 56 to set aside their class gift for the purchase of equipment for the radio station. Mention Emmerich Ressler, Stan, because she was the first program director. The console that we started out with when we had it up in the station was made of a box made locally, and I made it myself, out of aluminum, which was left over from the siding of a dormitory which we once had on campus over where the arts building now stands.
Thank you very much, Jake. What he said about the time spent on the station is very much an understatement.
Up next on WGCS, we travel through the ages and take a look at how much the programming has changed in the past 60 years.
This is Joan Baez, and you're listening to the Woodsongs Old Time Radio Hour.
Hey there, we're starting Acoustic Cafe once again. I'm Rob Reinhardt.
Hey, you're listening to World Cafe. I'm Talia Schlanger.
This is Phil Waite, Pastoral Team Leader of College Mennonite.
Welcome to the Bioneers.
Crosswinds comes your way every weeknight from 9 to 11 p.m. on WGCS. If you would like to know more about our station and the fine arts programs you enjoy.
Brought to you in part by the listeners who support WGCS.
Classical music, Americana, sports, news. All of these are different programs that have aired throughout the history of WGCS. The station has provided a great learning experience for Goshen students. In the early years, there were many roadblocks along the way. Class schedules prevented student DJs from filling on airtime. Station signals also conflicted with sensitive equipment at the adjacent Goshen Hospital and the on-campus science building. These roadblocks did not deter the students as they tailored their on-air schedule to the needs of the college. John Frankenfield remembers these on-air times.
We would broadcast in the morning, but we would broadcast through chapel. Okay, so maybe it was like 7 o'clock till 9:30, then shut the system down, and then coming back up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and play something lighter in the afternoon, and then the heavier classical through the evening.
In addition to the tailored music format, Dale Sloat produced special event programming.
One thing that we did was I got names of all the high school graduates in the area, and we had a special program to honor them.
By the 1980s, the students' interest in WGCS's classical music format slowly faded. With this diminished interest, new programming was introduced to keep the students engaged. This programming came in the form of Synthesis, a late-night student-run show that primarily focused on folk and bluegrass music rather than the daytime classical format. Stan Zaire remembers how this transpired.
If you worked at least X number of hours every week on air, then you could host one night a week, like a 2-hour shift called Synthesis, which started at 10:30, and you could play pretty much whatever you wanted as long as it met certain guidelines. And so that carrot out there was, students signed up and filled up the rest of the day slots so they could have a shift, some night during the evening.
The decline in student interest in classical music caused problems even for the student station managers. Matt Kaufman-Smith, class of 1994, recalls some of the struggles.
I think the most difficult part of being station manager was we had to fill 40 volunteer slots. And it was hard to find that many people, especially that were doing classical music.
As technology evolved, the addition of an AP teletype was brought into WGCS so students could perform newscasts.
As September is quickly coming to an end in the next couple weeks, the voting registration is quickly creeping up on us as well.
Barth Haig, former student station manager, knows all too well the challenges of providing news to the public.
Probably our biggest challenge was news. We had an AP teletype machine. We got the news, as most stations did in those days, on paper. It was just pretty horrible. We had a lot of people who did not know how to read. They didn't understand foreign names. They weren't very up to date on news. They were students and they were learning.
It wasn't always local or state news that was being read by DJs on air. Weather alerts were also sent over the wire. Stan Zayer had a laugh when one such weather alert happened.
This is a test. This station is conducting a test of the emergency broadcast system. This is only a test. This is a test of the emergency broadcast system. The broadcasters of your area, in voluntary cooperation with federal, state, and
whenever there was a major alert or if there was a weather advisory, it went off. And so the teletype machine went off and the student went out and ripped it and came back and read the weather bulletin that announced that there was a tornado warning for towns in the path. It included Goshen, and it started listing, take cover. There was a long pause on the air, and then all of a sudden you heard the steel door open for the studio, and you heard the steps to get down to the ground floor of like ting, 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 people running down the steps, and the door at the base of the steps slammed, and the station was just broadcasting dead air for quite a while.
Although news coverage was not the focal point during these years, sports broadcasting was always a constant. In the late 1960s, Charlie Kaufman organized live remote broadcasts of the Goshen College men's basketball games.
Ken Eichste and I did the first remote live basketball away game broadcast. We piled everything in my 1957 Chevy and drove to Bluffton, Ohio, and did, using a remote phone line, did a live broadcast of the Bluffton College basketball game.
By the 1990s, WGCS was covering more men's basketball than ever. Home and away games were both covered on a routine basis. However, coverage of the away games required extra funding that was not always in the budget. Facing this problem, Stan Zayer remembers how passionate he was covering the games.
And then we also started what we called the GCS fan van, where we basically, instead of requesting a car from the vehicle pool, we requested a 12-passenger van. And we put notes that we were taking the fan van to whatever game we're leaving at this time on this date, for this game, would be back approximately then. Cost per rider would be $8, $10, $12. We generated enough money, as I recall, from that, where a lot of times the vans were full, where we'd have 8 to 10 people that would ride along.
For all of the content that was being produced at WGCS, there was one important piece of equipment that expanded the working lab: the transmitter. At the time, the transmitter that WGCS owned was old technology on used equipment. Chrissy Kaufman remembers some of the frustrations that the transmitter caused.
We had like 100-degree heat outside, and the transmitter room was really, really hot. And if it got too hot, the numbers that we would broadcast over, our frequency would actually go up. So there was a time when we were broadcasting on, I don't know, I think it went up to like 91.9 or 92.2, something like that. And I finally said, okay, we need to turn this off because this is not our frequency. And I'm not sure what FCC would do if they realize we're not broadcasting on our own frequency.
Sandy Schwartzendruber remembers his father tinkering with the transmitter to keep it working on the right frequency.
The college was required to have an outside engineering firm to come in and check the modulation and the frequency and all this kind of thing to make sure that it was right on 91.1. And so they would have an outfit from Kansas City come in to do that. Well, before that happened, Dad would come up with his old BC 221, which is a military type frequency meter, a very accurate one. And he would play with the thing. He'd have to stay on for a couple of days to settle down. And then he would adjust it, and then the guys would come in and they would take a look at it. And he always was really pretty proud and excited that whenever they came that he had the thing tuned within the framework of where they were supposed to be.
But all those problems were about to vanish. It was under the persistent guidance of General Manager Bill Frisbee that in the late 1990s, the station was able to upgrade and move the transmitter.
7.4 kilowatts of effective radiated power at that time. That's quite a bit of power to have low to the ground. We began to look for a location, what would work, and we had to have engineering done to find location. And one of the areas that was suitable happened to be where the tower ended up, on the property of someone who was very friendly to Goshen College. And so the engineering began, and the discussion was, how big of a tower do we need? Do we need a tower that just gets WGCS and its facility up and running in a new location? Or might we benefit from creating a site that's friendly to other broadcasters as well? I was able to make the case that we shouldn't make the tower as small as possible and just get off campus, but rather let's be more robust because of the potential for rental and so forth. And so fortunately, that idea passed through the system, and we built this site out on the cornfield off of County Road 21.
But as fate would have it, the new transmitter got itself into some trouble. Glenn Gilbert, former WGCS engineer, remembers an incredible incident with the equipment about a year after the transmitter was moved.
And I can remember I was at breakfast and somebody called me and said the radio station just went off the air, and I don't know why. So I went out there and found that somebody had broken in and had, with one of these high-speed grinders, had just literally ground off the power cables and the transmission cables and just ripped out the transmitters, which are about the size of a good-sized microwave. And they were just gone. And it was really strange because very few people would know what they were stealing, but he stole the transmitters and disappeared, and we never saw him again. And actually it was okay because the transmitters were early generation. They were kind of new, and we were having problems with them. They're made by Crown here in Elkhart. And we were facing either having to do a major overhaul of them or replacing them. So this settled that for us. We got brand new transmitters from the insurance company.
To whom it may concern, I am at Branchville Correctional Facility. A few months ago, I came into contact with an ungodly fellow who was incarcerated for robbery. His crimes included breaking into radio sheds and stealing the expensive radio equipment. While bragging about his escapades and learning that I was from Elkhart, he began to tell me that he broke into a Goshen College facility and stole their radio equipment. He says with bravado that Goshen College never caught him. I tell you in order that if his story is true, you can bring closure to this event without fear of another robbery. May God grant you peace.
WGCS now broadcasts with a transmitter located just off State Road 21 in Goshen, Indiana. With an effective radiated power of 6,000 watts and programming reaching across the greater Michiana area, WGCS has made its mark on the map.
I mean, it really is impossible to have one memory, one great memory. There's just so many.
Every award the Globe wins has to be prominently displayed so much they are running out of room to do so, I'm sure that is an ongoing logistical problem.
You know, they're thinking to themselves, who is Goshen College? Where is Goshen College? And you're just looking at them kind of with a wry smile to say, yeah, that's right, we can do it too.
The Globe is unique in the fact that most college radio exists within the college where it's at. The thing I think that stands out to me about the Globe is it certainly serves the community that it is set up for here in Goshen, Indiana, and it does so with kind of a major market attitude.
It's small enough that you get to do a lot of things, but it's committed to quality, to excellence, and to keeping these things going, that you get to do good things. It's not, the radio station was never, in my time, this thing off to the side that people did it as a last resort. It was seen as something cool to do.
Yeah, I mean, you walk into that sort of environment, and it was a very humbling experience.
And I don't know, I always really enjoyed it. I always looked forward to it. It was kind of a treat, from some other things that I did my senior year.
With us going to New York and going to Chicago and going to those award ceremonies, they kind of set the precedent for us initially. Work hard.
Yeah, I definitely am. I still dig culturally progressive music.
You are listening to a 60-year retrospective on 91.1 The Globe. As the legacy of WGCS continues on, many things are bound to evolve.
It was a 4,000-watt transmitter. This was the move. We started getting involved with the move from when the radio station was the actual transmitter was at your college, right across from the hospital.
During that time, we've done a number of physical upgrades to the station. We built the two production studios where record storage used to be. We've rewired at least 4 times for growth and modernization. We now completely run across an Ethernet backbone. We have no audio cables running from studio to studio, and everything is all run over the network.
So you're live on the air, and in the background you just get and you're trying to give out a good product, and you're trying to think radio, everything is heard when that microphone turns on. And so you're trying to do a show, and they're just going at it construction-wise.
Up next on 91.1 The Globe, a 60-year legacy, a format change that rocked WGCS to the core.
WGCS had a long-standing history of being a classical music station for over 40 years. But June 21st, 2004 would mark a historic change to the station. Leading up to that date would be challenging, as the faculty of Goshen College were looking for someone to continue to lead the station into a new era. That person became Jason Samuel. President Emeritus Shirley Showalter was part of the committee that was looking for a new general manager.
I remember thinking that he was clearly the candidate of choice. Evidently, I challenged him to really make the station something great.
And great the station would become. Dwayne Stoltsfuz, chair of the communication department, also helped in the search.
As we were trying to figure out what we would need to do to make sure the station stayed successful, there was an opening, and we hired Jason, and he had this vision that included a shift in the music format, and that also included doing a lot more original content, broadcasting sports games on campus and more. That idea resonated with the committee. It certainly did with me. And so in effect, as so often happens, you look to someone who's ready to take on an enterprise, to take on a station, and has a vision for what that could be.
As the date of June 21st, 2004 drew closer, Jason Samuel geared up for the change. It was 6:06 a.m. when it happened. As classical music faded from the airwaves, another song started up.
Wherever you roam,
and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone, or the times they are a-changing.
To some, the format change was a step in the right direction.
But to others, this change from classical music to Americana was harsh.
A lot of longtime listeners, many closely associated with the college, former professors and administrators who had a keen personal stake in this. And it was really hard for them to say goodbye to the WGCS that they knew. There was mourning that happened, and there's no, I wouldn't want to in any way understate what that meant.
Although faculty struggled in the wake of the format change, there remained a sense of acceptance from the WGCS community.
I do think stations, like other parts of life, you know, they have their best time, and it was the year for a kind of new chapter for the radio station.
Jason Samuel, general manager of WGCS, understood just how much this music change would affect the community.
When I was hired in 2003, one of the mandates was to turn the radio station into something that Goshen College could be proud of and could promote and could be a talking point for the institution. I asked the committee if they really wanted to know what I felt would be the number one thing to improve the radio station overall, and that was a format change. So I went and did research. I proposed that we go with a format that we had already had some familiarity with, because in the evenings, there had already been a push towards some folk music and some bluegrass programming, and I wanted to just expand that.
With WGCS changing formats, it seemed more appropriate to rebrand the station in its entirety. Former President Shirley Showalter noted one particular element of WGCS that resonated with the community.
One of the things that really helped was the name, the Globe, and the idea of world music, because the same faculty who believed that the liberal arts should stand for something classical and fine arts and loved being able to tune in and have the kind of music that they enjoyed on the radio, they were also people who believed in the mission of the college as a internationally focused place. They could see, oh yeah, even though it's not one aspect of the liberal arts, it's another one. It's this unique thing that Goshen does.
Jason further explained how he came up with the moniker The Globe.
I had to come up with something that could represent the college and the radio station and the format and kind of the things that we stand for and promote. And I wanted to make sure that we had something that was unique, yet also could be connected to Goshen College.
With the recent rebranding of WGCS underway, Jason Samuel took it upon himself to honor the roots of the station by also changing its tagline.
I wanted to make a connection with the idea of culture. So being culturally progressive, I felt also spoke to the fact that that's where we are, but also where we're going.
Just like the founding fathers of the station in the 1950s, Professor Jake Schwartzendruber and Dr. Roy Umbel, the hiring of Jason Samuel in 2003 brought new life and energy to the students at the station. Aubrey Hauser, class of 2009, talked about just how creative and engaging Jason can be at times.
He was someone that saw opportunity in everyone, whether you were type A, wanting to get things done, which maybe I lean more toward, or like super nerdy and really into music, and like he found an opportunity for you to get involved wherever you were, and then would give you the tough love, when you needed it too.
Jason's charismatic and fun-loving nature cultivated not only a relationship with the WGCS community, but also a deep and profound relationship with his students.
Actually got engaged in the main studio at the Globe. It was snowing really bad, and so I checked on the station just to make sure everything was clear before I went to go write my paper in the library. Got all settled in, and then I got an alert on my phone that the station was off air. And I was like, I was literally just there. And I swing open the door because I'm like, well, seriously, it's dark. Like, they were just here a half hour ago. And there's my now husband, Justin, sitting in a chair with a guitar, and there's flowers. I'm like, what is going on?
Over a long career at Goshen College, which has seen him grow from a member of the student staff to the general manager, Jason has crafted a fun and efficient way to teach his students the same lessons that he has learned. Danielle Kershackle, digital programming coordinator at Moody Radio, can attest to some of the things that Jason does.
I remember a couple of years ago, it was the worst winter that we've had in a really long time. The campus hadn't fully opened yet, so I had to stay at Jason's house. And that night, it was probably, I don't know, it snowed that night about 12 to 14 inches. And with the wind chill, it was about 40 below. Jason was adamant about us going up to the station and cleaning off the satellite dish. So he goes out there and he starts brushing it off. And I come out there with him, and I am on this stool-like thing because I'm very short. I'm about 5 feet tall, and a broom brushing off the satellite.
Jason knows that it takes more than just hard work to make the Globe such a success, which is why he strives so hard to keep both his students and his listeners entertained.
And after we finally got done, we went inside, and I was like, Jason, what happens if we can't get here? What do we do? He's like, well, you know what? Why don't we run non-weather specific weathers? I was like, what? How do we do that? He's like, look up the weather in Costa Rica, look up the weather in Jamaica, look it up anywhere that's warm. And so for the next 3 or 4 days, we ran Costa Rican and Jamaican weather forecasts. It's like, hey, guys, and it's 95 and sunny, even though it's actually 40 below zero and freezing, and you can't leave your house. It was so funny. It was so goofy. It was so Jason. And that's something that I will never forget.
With Jason bringing his broadcasting experience to the table, the Globe broke into the national spotlight. Al Moss, a promoter of indie music, has had the opportunity to know Jason and the kind of work that he does.
If there were 100 radio stations in America playing Americana music that were run by Jason Samuel or that were run in the way that he runs WGCS, Americana would be an even healthier format than it is. So it's not only what Jason does for the students, it's not only what Jason does for the college, it's not only what Jason does for the alumni, it's not only what Jason does for the town of Goshen, but it's also what Jason does that has an impact and reverberates throughout Indiana and throughout the country, really.
Jason brings his own energy.
Jason is a tremendous leader, and I believe that his mindset on making this radio station an important part of the Michiana community, you couldn't have picked a better guy.
You probably realize what a great teacher Jason is, not only in teaching the students that work at WGCS broadcasting, but also just teaching them about life.
The impact that Jason had on me and my life and my career, you know, we kind of joked. I called him like my stepdad because the guy did so much for me. You know, he taught me a lot. He taught me a lot about just how to be a person, how to be a good person, how to take responsibility, how to be accountable, how to treat people the right way, how to put on a good sports broadcast, how to prepare.
Jason has always been just super supportive of me and the things that I've done in my life, whether it be radio or other communication things. He's always stayed in touch, which I've really appreciated, and his leadership is just invaluable. So
You can go in and you and yourself could be just tired. And then all of a sudden you hear Jason, he's like, dude, what's up? What's going on? How's everything going? And all of a sudden you went from being at a 10 to all of a sudden being at 110.
This is 91.1 The Globe, a 60-year legacy. WGCS continues to evolve, but not without struggles. Even though technology has helped radio stations, there are still problems that every DJ can relate to.
But eventually he asked me to do an on-air interview. It was 2 performing artists that are local that were going to be performing at the Brew. And so I was just supposed to promote them and ask questions about the group, what they're doing, why they're doing it, what kind of music they've got, and then have them perform over the air. You know, pretty stock standard for Globe affairs. But me, being the young and uninformed individual that I was, kind of forgot that there are 2 microphones and 2 different switches for the microphones. So I had my mic on, And then I would mute my mic when they want to do anything. Well, I forgot to have their mic on, so there were a lot of points where the interview was just dead silent over the air. Except at least the benefit was I left my mic on during their music segments, so you could kind of hear it. I felt so bad that I had to go to their performance. I bought a ticket for their performance just to apologize to them after the performance for botching the entire interview.
Because if it's dead air for 4 minutes, that's when you get the notification. You know, it was the bane of my existence because I think I was one of the only ones that would receive those other than Jason. And since I was on campus, I was the one that was taking care of it. But you know, you get those at 12:04 Sunday mornings. If there was somebody that forgot to show up, put the church service on in the morning. You'd be sitting in class and all of a sudden, you know, you get a dead air notification, but you know that it's going to come back on at the top of the hour anyway, and you can't do anything about it, so you just kind of let it go.
Sometimes when we would try to, we'd be keeping things going. I remember making some tapes ahead of time, and I would put it on. I remember one time I was 2 houses down from the college, Sunday night. You stick it on at 7 till 8, about 7:45. I was like, oh, I got to run on the station and switch that one out and put the new one in. And so, you know, back then we didn't have, we had to sort of do that kind of stuff manually.
A 60-year retrospective continues here on 91.1 The Globe.
Welcome to 91.1 The Globe, where we have NAIA Crossroads League action.
He shoots it. That's in the goal!
Jamerson will go left-handed baseline, up and under for 2. Timeout, Goshen College. Ball gets inbounded. Bolton seals it away, and he throws it off of Hoffer's leg.
To Isak Huerta, will he outrun his man?
And the Maple Leafs get this one!
It's good! Lania Noel knocks down the 3. 3 seconds left. Quinn across the timeline. Half-court heave is up. Oh, it hit the rim, but it's no good. The Maple Leafs win and advance to the Sweet 16.
One constant at WGCS for the past 60 years has been sports broadcasting. The athletic department and the radio station always had a strong relationship, but under the watchful eye of Jason, the sports department of the Globe grew. Dalton Shetler understood what it took to make WGCS one of the best sportscasting programs in the country.
When I first came onto campus for the visit and I spoke with Jason, and he goes, "Are you hardcore? Because this business is hardcore. You've got to be hardcore to be in this business." And I sat there and I remember taking that moment in and thinking to myself, this is an environment where if I work as hard as possible, I will have whatever opportunity I want.
Throughout his time at Goshen College, the opportunities that were available to Dalton were endless.
Going down to Iowa City with the women's basketball team and broadcasting that. I was the color commentator for that tournament. Andrew Snyder was the play-by-play voice.
Noel, Tekka, and Williams. Gets it to Sears.
What was wild is that it went beyond broadcasting. And I had been playing on the men's team a year or two prior. So when we went out there to Iowa City, they asked me to help them out with the practice team. So Andrew and I not only are calling the games, but we're helping the ladies out during the practices. And for us to be able to go out there and spend some time together with the team and take in some of those incredible moments like Lania Noel's 3-point game-winning shot that
the Maple Leafs win in advance to the
Andrew Snyder called as well. It was truly a remarkable time and one that I'd still carry with me.
Joel Short was another student who had opportunities presented to him through sportscasting for the Globe.
Joel Short alongside Chad Coleman, and we are live from Victory Field in Indianapolis, Indiana, Goshen College.
Really the neatest thing that I got to do was Goshen College men's baseball somehow had a connection with the Indianapolis Indians. Before their season started, they wanted to try out the stadium, make sure everything was working, lights, all that stuff. So the Goshen College team played, I forget who, down there at Victory Field. And I got to go along, and actually I took Chad Coleman as my color. You're inside, you ride an elevator up to the press box. It's a beautiful field. Glass, of course, you could open it. It was a cold day. I think we opened it for a little bit and then shut it, to keep us out of the elements. And it was just pretty awesome. You felt like you were in the big time.
To the plate, and he is tagged out. And so the side is...
However, it wasn't always as fun as it appears to be. Many times there were factors that made broadcasting games difficult. Josh Gross, former Globe sportscaster, understood the sporadic difficulties when broadcasting sports, both at home and on the road.
Well, yeah, road games especially. It's you got to contact the school, and that's not always a fun thing to do. So you show up hoping to find an outlet or a phone line, or it being locked away or something, and having to find the right person with the right key to be able to get it and scramble to hook up. And then same with either having a partner, a color analyst, or even somebody back in the studio as a board operator. That's how I first started, was just being the board op.
With the unpredictable Indiana weather, the transition between the fall and winter causes problems for broadcasting sports late into the season. Not being prepared for the elements can be dangerous, but sometimes the game drives the sportcaster into the middle of the elements to do what they love.
But actually for super sectionals for the soccer team that went to nationals, that was up at Cornerstone. It was super frigid, and they didn't have a press box. I was on the sideline by myself at this table. It was just freezing, but it was fun.
More than just one problem can arise in the heart of the Indiana winter. Slick roads and visibility are two factors that can affect teams traveling on the road. Spencer Buttermore, class of 2018, had an unfortunate experience with getting home from a women's basketball game in the middle of January.
I was going down my freshman year with the women's basketball team to Indiana Wesleyan University to do a solo broadcast. We are on our way back home. It's dark, it's snowy, it's freezing, and the bus breaks down. We had to bunk up in a hotel for the night. I ended up staying in the same room with the assistant coach, Vinny, and had to get up next morning. They brought a rescue bus. Now, the rescue bus was interesting because not only did it have no heat, there was also a crack in the front door, and it wouldn't actually seal, and I'm pretty sure the entire bus was just a frozen icicle.
Benjamin Kelly, voice of the Northwest Arkansas Naturals, a AA team located in Texas, remembers how he got his start in sports broadcasting.
I go back to that first game that I did, that soccer game with Sammy Rosario. And Sammy didn't know what he was talking about either, and neither did I. But I was banking on him because I thought that he knew soccer, and it probably sounded horrific. I had watched soccer growing up, but I had never really done play-by-play for it. And I would throw it to Sammy to get some analysis, and he started talking about the referees. He literally would say the referees are working very, very hard, very, very hard. And I'm just looking at him like, man, I need some type of analysis. Like, how come they're getting open in the field? Like, why are these passes being able to go through? It's like,
the opportunities presented to Dalton Shetler and the rest of the staff have made WGCS one of the best stations in the nation.
Being 19, 20 years old, you don't get those type of opportunities everywhere. And not everybody would give you that opportunity. But Jason, again, if you lived hardcore like he does, because he's as hardcore as it gets, if you live hardcore like he does, he'll supply you with everything you need.
As WGCS became recognized on a national level, there came with it certain expectations. Never be boring and always strive for excellence. However, at WGCS, excellence comes in the forms of awards and trophies.
I'll tell the funny story first.
Jason made us eat gas station burritos while we were doing production work for IBS. We were up here at like 2 a.m. We were all hungry, and Jason's like, come on, Jim, let's go. And he bought 10 gas station burritos, and he was just throwing them in the microwave at the gas station, warming them up, and then he brought them back.
So we head out to Mount Vernon Nazarene the day before. We hop on the bus, ride all the way back. I can't quite remember if that's a 4 or 5 hour drive. And I remember I got to get the contest pieces in. And we get back at 3:30 in the morning, and I head straight up here to the studios, and I got done editing all the contest pieces by about 8:30. It took me about 5 hours. I just went to breakfast, went to classes, and I just about crashed at practice the very next day. I'll never forget that experience. I don't want to relive that experience, but I'll never forget that experience.
I mostly just have a really fond memory of there just being like 7 people up in the globe, all working together. Jason would get the pizza or something. Those nights, the whole staff got together.
I just said, okay, listen, I can't go into class today. I have to get this done tonight. If I divvy off for 2 hours, I don't think it's going to happen. So
this year was actually one of the craziest years because we did the all-nighter the day before they were due because Jason had that wedding on Friday night, so we couldn't spend Friday night up here until midnight. So instead, we came up here around 6, I think, on Thursday night after dinner, and we didn't leave until 8 o'clock the next morning.
It did take a long time. I mean, we were up here at the Globe. I mean, they were D-days, but they were so much fun. And those are some of the best memories I have of school, is just being here, locked in the Globe. Okay, it's crunch time, guys. We have to get this done. We're doing, like 3 hours. We got to get this thing completed.
J.D. Hirschberger, class of 2017, and former student station manager, remembers contest night.
As stressful as they were, those nights immediately before awards were due, frantically editing things and getting stuff put onto the computer, it was just really gratifying to have finished all of those projects and gotten everything in. And we also won a bunch of those awards. So it was, it had a good payoff as well.
Long nights call for lots of food and lots of energy. And who better to deliver than Jason Samuel? Danielle Kershackle can recall exactly how crazy contest night was.
Kelsey and I were upstairs working on submitting all this contest audio. And it is like the 11th hour, and we're working on the 1 hour piece. That's the summation of the station. So everything from sports to the morning show and everything in between. And all of a sudden you hear the pounding, boom, 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 boom. Security, open up. What the heck is going on? Boom, 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 boom. We're like, what's going on? The security cameras weren't working at the time. Actually, Jason knew this, and so he turned off all the lights in the stairwell. We opened the door. He, jumps out at both of us. We're all like, ah! But he came with, hot dogs and chips and monsters.
But those stressful nights surrounded by friends and staff all seemed to pay off when contest pieces began to be nominated. Kelsey Morris, class of 2013 and one of the most decorated WGCF staff members to date, talks about how cooperation and teamwork with her Globe colleagues has led to many national awards.
Just getting ready for the state contest and the national contest, I mean, it all came to prep. And when we talk about these awards, they're not just a certificate on the wall or a trophy that we can hang here in the Globe. I mean, I had an incredible staff when I was here, and I had a lot of help.
But the praise and celebration for winning isn't just limited to the student members. Benjamin Kelly fondly remembers how Jason treated him to dinner after winning his national award.
It was nice to see that our hard work didn't go unnoticed, and when we won Station of the Year, man, that was a thrill. I can remember that day. Jason took us out to dinner, and we properly celebrated in Times Square. It was awesome.
Since then, the Globe has won over 300 individual awards and 3 national titles, with the future of the Globe never looking brighter. A lot has changed since the beginning days of WGCS, from classical music to Americana, vinyls to live streaming, and a few hours a day to all hours of the day. WGCS has a rich history throughout its 60 years of broadcasting and serving the community. As a college radio station, WGCS has always been changing, with each manager bringing their own energy and ideas to the table. As 60 years of history and tradition continues on, 91.1 WGCS Goshen looks to the past to guide the future. This has been a 60-year retrospective on 91.1 The Globe.
Thanks for listening to WGCS in Goshen, Indiana. WGCS is owned and operated by the Goshen College Broadcasting Corporation. The station operates on the assigned frequency of 91.1 megahertz in stereo, with an effective radiated power of 7.4 kilowatts horizontal and vertical, with authorization from the Federal Communications Commission in Washington, D.C. Our studios and transmitter are located in the Union Building on the campus of Goshen College. Some WGCS programs are pre-recorded for broadcast at a later date. If you have any questions or comments about WGCS, write to the General Manager, WGCS Radio, Goshen College, Goshen, Indiana, 46526. This is 91.1 FM, WGCS, Goshen, Indiana.
This has been 91.1 The Globe, a 60-year legacy on WGCS Goshen. A special thanks to all the alumni who have kept this station running throughout the years. This program was produced by General Manager Jason Samuel, directed and edited by Laura Hoover, and narrated by Brad Stoltsfuz, Brandon Vires, and Courtney Crapser. This has been 91.1 The Globe, a 60-year legacy on WGCS Goshen.